Hi, and welcome to The Harvest, where you get your capital market news, views, and clues. And today I have Emily Rakowski. She is the CMO of Ecovadis. Emily, welcome. So excited to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Carmel. It's lovely to be here.
Excellent. Let's get straight into a bit of your background and history. Tell our viewers and audience who you are and how you find yourself in the space of sustainability ratings.
Yeah, so my name is Emily Rakowski. A career-long marketer of technology solutions. So I've been in the space of sourcing and procurement tech since 1999 and came up through companies like Ariba and SAP that have solutions for sourcing and procurement digitization. And I had the opportunity to join Ecovadis about 7 years ago. It's a combination of sourcing and procurement tech with really sustainability ratings on suppliers. So it brought together my background of really loving technology and the procurement function, but also using the lever of procurement for good by making sure that large companies are working with suppliers that have really strong sustainability management systems.
Wonderful. I imagine that it's a mammoth task just because it's such a new and evolving industry. But 7 years does sound like you've kind of sunk your teeth into the space quite a bit. What has been the biggest challenge in marketing to a space like this that is so evolving, so
Yeah,
new?
it is definitely evolving. I would say the co-CEOs who founded the company in 2007 really were a time because at the time, thinking about sustainability in your supply chain was very new. Not very many companies were thinking about it. There were a few companies here and there that had specific commodities that they purchased. They needed to be careful about like conflict minerals or cocoa or coffee. So some companies had started talking about responsible sourcing, but the idea of screening your whole supply chain for sustainability practices was not a thing back then. And little by little over the years, the concept of driving responsible sourcing into all of your main suppliers, your strategic suppliers, especially if you're manufacturing and there's direct material in your supply chain, became more and more important, along with regulations becoming a more important factor in the market as well. But even before that, the brand leaders out there who wanted to be able to talk about their responsible sourcing throughout their supply chain started to embrace this concept, I would say more like 8, 9 years ago.
It seems like it could be putting, companies on the back foot to some degree, and just me thinking about it's a new space. I've established my supply chain to a very detailed degree, and with this new regulation in place, it could almost seem like it's too big for me to even start. Because does that mean if my supply chain does not make the cut, so to speak, or live up to the sustainability ratings? Does that mean I've got to get rid of them? Is it as easy to unravel from supply chain that is not as aligned with sustainability? Is that the approach that companies have to take in this space? Maybe just provide more clarity for all of us.
Yeah, it's a really big question. So I think the expectation between our buying customers and their suppliers is that suppliers should be willing to participate in the process, to understand the results, and to drive for improvement. Whether they got a really poor result that was going to be disappointing for their customer, or whether they got a mediocre result that was okay, but they have some areas to grow, or whether they got a superior result. Most of those suppliers still want to go on an improvement journey and try to continue to do better and better. And I would say for the companies that aren't willing to either be rated or have some level of transparency between them and their buyers, that's where sometimes some of our customers will make challenging decisions to let suppliers go from their supply chain. But if they do end up doing that, it's obviously in a way that they already have other sources of supply ready to go, aligned, etc. What we see, I would say, the vast majority of cases where they see a supplier who has a not so great rating, they're just pushing them to educate themselves and to be able to do better. And the expectation is that could be a 12, 24, 36-month trajectory. It doesn't have to be overnight.
In your professional opinion, would it be better for smaller companies, startups, those just, getting into IPO or public spaces, the micro caps of the world? Would it be advisable to start this journey right now? And how do you go about strategizing that concept to them?
Absolutely. So it is kind of a remarkable situation, but there are suppliers in the biggest supply chains in the world that have 5 employees or 10 employees. They're extra small or very small.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we can't rate them. So a huge chunk of the companies we rate are of that size. A lot of times they have an important role to play in their customer supply chain. But there are still very foundational sustainability practices that they can be putting in place. So how they're treating their employees in terms of things like overtime or living wage, or ability for employees to come back and give their opinion about the workplace environment, things like that. Or if it's environmental, and even if it's an office-based company, right, they're not manufacturing anything, they can still have office practices that are very much more environmentally oriented, like automating your light system and having an office running on renewables and making sure you're not having any single-use plastics, and recycling everything that happens at your company, not printing material. Like and it's all the same practices that people can do at home as well. But it's just making sure that in the business environment, you're supporting all of those core foundational practices, and that really sets the stage for them to grow. So, they do well in our assessment. They look like a more attractive supplier. They ended up growing their business. Let's say they get to that, hundreds of employees part level or 1,000 employees level, then they have put in place the right foundations to continue building those sustainability management systems as they have a need for more sophisticated practices.
Excellent. So the time to start all of that is right now. Start where you are, so that you can, keep up in the bigger scheme of things. Speak to us about marketing strategies. That is your forte as CMO currently for Ecovadis. How do you tackle omni-channel presence, if that's one of your strategies? Talk us through that, and why do you think it's effective?
It's been a fascinating road. I'd say our primary business model is working again with those large enterprises who want to rate suppliers in their supply chain. So a lot of our marketing initially is directed at those large industries. So going to conferences and doing webinars on key regulations and topics, and things that those large enterprises are grappling with. So really focused on procurement supply chain leaders, focused on sustainability leaders, climate leaders, compliance leaders. So we're really going after those types of personas and putting ourselves in the right place to have meaningful conversations with them. And then they invite their suppliers into the process with us. That said, I think over time, the model will change. And so at some point of time, more companies will recognize that maybe they don't want to wait till they're asked by a customer to have a sustainability rating. And maybe they just want to have one that they can use with their prospects and that they can market themselves around. And so I think we will, over time, see more of an inflow of small and medium-sized enterprises that just want to get a rating as well. And so we're starting to shift our messaging, our market messaging, to talk about some of those foundational things I was just mentioning, like sustainability is good business. It will help you grow your business. It will help you stand out from the crowd. Those kinds of, basic value proposition messages to more small and medium-sized enterprises.
Wonderful, which brings me to my next question, which is, that brand message consistency, because I imagine that there's a diverse, host of clients, companies that you're dealing with, industries, regions. How do you maintain that, that message so it resonates with all those diverse audiences, but still is core to the messaging for Ecovadis and sustainability in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's really part of Ecovadis' purpose. So we became an official mission enterprise in France a couple of years ago, and we had to create a purpose phrase that is the foundation, the backbone of our mission, and that's to guide all companies toward a sustainable world. It's a massive charter. We've tried really hard to do the right things to make sure that the messages we're putting out there make sense in the moment for the biggest pain points or issues different companies are having or different industries are having. It has been aided quite a bit by the fact that a lot of our enterprise customers are part of sector initiatives. So they're actually collaborating together with their competitors in a sector initiative to understand their pool of suppliers all together, because they work with a lot of the same suppliers. And so we'll have like our hospitality initiative, our airlines initiative, our chemicals initiative, our beauty initiative. And those different enterprise customers will decide what are the key topics where we want to drive improvement into the supply base. And then it's driven really but from the industry perspective there. And so even though there's a lot of general things that take place in the foundations of sustainable business, we're able to also drive sector specific advancements by organizing our customers that way. And so that's been really helpful.
Super insightful. Thank you. And in the age of abundant data and analytics, right? How does Ecovadis leverage, those insights, data-driven insights, of course, to inform the marketing efforts and then measure the effectiveness of these campaigns?
First of all, Ecovadis is built on data. So we're a SaaS software platform, and we're collecting tons of sustainability information from hundreds of thousands of entities around the world. So we have a lot of information about what good looks like, benchmark data from all different geographies and sizes and industries. So we share that information in our annual index report to give people a sense of the trends that are happening in key environmental and labor and human rights themes around the world. So people can kind of understand how the whole industry is morphing and changing in terms of growth on practices. And then in my part of the function, my part of the world in marketing, we're using a lot of data on the back of all the systems and tools that we have in place, like our marketing automation tool, our Salesforce instance, our demand generation, account-based marketing tooling, to understand what are the demand signals in the market, what kind of intent are different companies and industries showing, what are the topics they're searching on and they care about, so that we can build the right content to help educate them. And then, once we're actually talking about bringing demand into our demand funnel, are we doing the right things in terms of how we're nurturing that demand and educating and giving the right types of things to them while they've come to us and said, hey, Ecovadis, I downloaded your paper, or I came to your webinar, I want to know more. So we want to give them more of that information that they want. And then ultimately, if we did the right things, we're creating actually demand for Ecovadis service and software.
On AI, do you guys use AI?
So actually, if we go even 10 years back in Ecovadis journey, as a SaaS software platform, we always had to use AI, because a lot of what we do in evaluating supplier responses into our assessment requires us to read a ton of evidence and documentation. So every supplier can upload up to 55 pieces of evidence. So you can imagine, on the scale of hundreds of thousands of companies being assessed, how much documentation we need to cull through. And so we can't only have people working on that. So we do have people who evaluate and score every scorecard, but AI and machine learning has helped with all that documentation for the analysts to very quickly see what places in that documentation do they actually need to read through, where are the keywords, where are the key topics that they're looking for, and it helps anchor them right away with that. It also helps inform our scoring model based on the evidence that we've gotten. It helps inform our risk mapping tools. So we're able to say, okay, we feed the model with country risk and industry risk and that type of thing. And then when we upload lists of suppliers from our customers, we can automatically map them all over the world and say, here's a level of risk based on where they are in their industry and everything like that. So we've literally been using AI for a long time. And what we're doing now is trying to see how we can apply AI to make the information that we have on our platform more accessible. So if I'm, a buyer of, plastic moldings at a manufacturing company, and I've rated 20 suppliers in that space, can AI help me sort of, hone in on which are the suppliers that I really need to have a meaningful improvement conversation with, and what are the key things I'm asking them to do? And so we're working on building like a chat engine for, hey, help me have a meaningful conversation with supplier X. And it'll immediately tell you the 3 things to talk with them about, and that kind of thing. So really applying it more for the accessibility and the use of the knowledge that we have.
Wonderful. And so, of course, everyone that's starting to slowly adopt AI is definitely seeing the benefits, myself included, and it becomes addictive because you can just function so much faster. But on the flip side, and I've just recently looked at some research related to this. There's some estimates that with the growing demand for AI and the consistent development we're going to have, it could potentially take up a quarter of the US's electricity, right?
Mm,
2030. So on
yeah,
the side, there's this wonderful adoption of it and excitement and actually hunger for it. But, sustainably down the line,
absolutely.
are we looking at what that could mean?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's also foundational at Ecovadis is that everything we do, we look at our carbon footprint associated with it. And so we have already set an SBTI-based carbon target, which we are on track to achieve. But what it means is every time we invest in a new technology, for example, the hosting of our software, the use of AI servers, how much we travel, what we do at our in-person events, how we serve food, how we organize electricity and things for those types of events, all of it is under scrutiny. And so we absolutely make sure that our sustainability footprint is as minimal as possible. We're bringing on board renewable energy into everything we do. We're looking at, localized food. We're looking at server farms that, are, very focused on sustainability in terms of using renewables for their operations, etc. So, obviously we don't live in a world yet where all energy is renewable or even can be depending on its location, but the speed with which the renewable technology is moving and how much energy can come from renewables in the next decade. I am very hopeful that even something like AI, which does use a lot of energy, will be able to be supported, almost exclusively by renewable energy at some point in the next decade.
With you on that hope, because it's a phenomenon at the moment and really exciting times.
Yeah.
Was there any particular moment or experience that reinforced your belief in the importance of sustainable business practices?
I didn't know that much about it, to be honest, when I joined Ecovadis. I knew that I wanted to move in a direction that was more mission and purpose oriented. It was just a perfect marriage for me when I joined Ecovadis to bring together my sourcing procurement background with the sustainability mission. And so for me, that was when the green light went on. I said, I didn't even know there was such a thing, but it's a perfect way that I can apply my expertise to have impact. And the fact of the matter is that 80% of every company's sustainability impact is in their supply chain, not in their own operations. And so if we can get more and more supply chains to be embracing sustainable business, we're going to have the maximum possible impact, in terms of what we do on a day-to-day.
So, yeah, you touched on the various strategies that you have, but if supply chain is such a big segment of this forward momentum, what are the strategies to get into that space and get the understanding across, really?
A lot of companies and supply chains, I mean, some are very large and very sophisticated and already doing a lot of great things on sustainability. But then again, there's a lot of private companies, a lot of smaller companies, middle size, smaller size, and that's where they usually don't have a head of sustainability. They're not big enough to have hired that role. There's maybe a COO who's trying to also do that. Or a few employees have gotten together and said, hey guys, let's do some sustainability initiatives, right? But it's really nobody's full-time job. And so what we're really trying to do is bring the sustainability knowledge into a variety of different functions within the supplier, right? So HR can look at some, social and human rights issues and start working on diversity training and living wage and things like that. And then somebody in the product manufacturing area can dig in on circularity and not using virgin material and what are their options on the market to move in a more circular way, or what are ways to better use end of life strategies for your products where they're not going to get thrown away. So all of those types of things are things that might reside in different functions within a supplier entity. So we're really trying to make all of our contents available to all of the different roles within a supplier and bring everyone, up to speed and really starting to move strategically on that direction.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Just make it role specific. It's really individual's responsibility.
We say sustainability is everyone's business.
Where do you see the industry, the impact and the success? Where do you see that being in, say, the next decade? And I think you touched on this, but just a little more specifically, maybe just shed some light on that.
I mean, we're one of those companies that ideally we wouldn't need to exist. Okay, so ideally we work ourselves out of business, and all companies adopt really robust sustainability management practices as a manner of standard business, right? Like that's how everything does work and should work. In reality, there are some industries and some areas of the world where that's just not likely to be the case, even in 10 years. AI is having a big impact. We're seeing all kinds of new tech come out. There's worker voice technology, like people have on their phone, or they can say if something's wrong in their factory that they're working at anonymously. Assessments can become more and more automated based on these types of tech. So there's going to be a lot of dramatic changes. We don't know exactly what they're all going to be yet, but a lot of it will have to do with automation. A lot of it will have to do with cool new technology. And a lot of it will hopefully have to do with the bar being continually raised on the standards of business.
Taking it back to a more personal note again, in your journey and the trajectory from, SaaS and tech into sustainability, have you found that to be a smooth journey as a female in the space? I
think SaaS software and tech firms have been very embracing of female leaders and really promoting of female leaders, which is amazing. Giving space for building families and having time off when needed, but not really taking people off of a leadership trajectory. But at the same time, when a gal says to me, "Hey, you know what? Do you feel like you had it all? That you could have it all?" I'm like, I don't really believe in having it all. I don't think anyone in the world has it all, and I think having most is kind of how I say it. I'm like, I think you can have most. You're not always going to feel like you're the best employee, you're the best partner, you're the best mother, you're the best friend, you're the best daughter or sister or anything, right? But you try your hardest and you feel like, you can be fulfilled in most areas of your life.
You can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yes.
Well, are there any final remarks you want to leave for aspiring leaders who may want to, see themselves as a CMO one day in the space or not?
I just think, you need to push. I don't want to say lean in because that's been done, but I do think you need to identify areas where you think you can have a meaningful change impact, whether that has to do with sustainability or it has to do with process optimization, or it has to do with filling a white space for your products in the market, or it has to do with, identifying, customer issues and being the best customer advocate you can be. All of those things, just wanting to push your company or your industry forward and finding those opportunities out there to do that, and then just take the reins. Like, if no one else is doing it, if an issue is circling, no one is grabbing it by the horns, then just take it. Say, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness later. I'm moving this topic ahead. Some people say, if you see a broken window, fix it type of thing, right? Like, don't wait. And forge ahead and just be a thought leader, be a action leader for your organization. And people will recognize that, and 9 times out of 10 it gets rewarded. So
excellent. That's a wonderful place to end off this conversation. Emily, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and look forward to catching up on more developments very soon.
Thank you, Carmel. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
That's it for The Harvest. Catch this and more on Spotify, Apple Music, and anywhere you find your podcasts.